Hello, everybody. Welcome to Architecture Talk Tank with Sarah Colata. We're at the 56th episode today, which is really exciting. I just had a little chance to update my publications on YouTube today, as well as podcasts and websites. So if you guys want to perhaps listen to all the last episodes, just go to sarahcolata.com or find me on YouTube. Today, my guest is Iva Kravitz, and I'm very, very excited for the conversation that we're going to have because Iva is extremely passionate about communications. She's been serving the architecture industry and architects for many years. And not only I'm interested to find out more about Iva, but also to hear some of her amazing advice for architects, because one, comes the experience, two, she's been published widely in some publications like Madame Architect as well. And I've read an interesting article where she shares a lot of advice, and I hope that we share all of that with you guys today as well. So Iva, thank you so much for joining me at Architecture Talk Time.
Thank you, Sarah. You get a huge pass because you're European, and in Europe, my name is said Iva, but in the United States, it's Iva.
Oh, is it?
So yeah, I say that because for anyone in the England or US, it's Iva. I forgive my Italian cousins. And
okay, brilliant. So let's correct that then.
Spain, okay, in France, Spain, and Roman language countries, people say Iva, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Iva Kravitz.
Yeah,
amazing. So Iva, tell us a little bit about your origins of deciding to help architects with branding and communications. Where did that idea come from?
So it's jumped to a long time ago. And I don't know if people understand that it used to be actually illegal in the United States, or certainly in the state of New York, for architects or people in professional services to advertise or really promote themselves. And that's true for architects and doctors and lawyers. Before, I think the early 80s, you never saw advertising for any of those professional services. And that all changed in the mid 80s. And this is why, if you think about architecture traditionally, like generations ago, and architects and how they got work. And I'm talking about like the bow tie classic, architects. They got work through clubs and connections and social events, because it was actually legal to really promote or advertise. So anyway, I had been working at a PR firm, although I wasn't really doing PR. I was doing marketing of professional service, technical part of investor relations. And I worked for someone who was really smart, and he understood that computers were going to be the way work was done. And we figured out a way to market our service. And it was something I was utterly disinterested in. But around the same time, I was getting married to a guy who was a designer, to whom I'm still married. And, I had this one thing I knew how to do, which was market professional services. And a lot of our friends actually were architects. And one of the things I was able to see as I talked to my friends about their businesses, and they were mostly very small businesses, was that they were caught in this very stupid cycle of getting a job and then having everyone in the firm work on that job. And then when the job was over, they'd be like, oh, shit, we have no work, like, now what's the next thing? And everyone would start marketing this, go to business, marketing, and then they'd get another job. So I describe this is the way, if you've ever seen 5-year-olds play soccer, the ball goes to one end of the field, and the entire group of 5-year-olds goes to one end, and then the ball goes to the other end, and all the kids go to the other end. Like, it's exactly like 5-year-olds playing soccer. This is my metaphor for small business, small architecture firm marketing. It's ridiculous. So I started working with graphic design, architecture, small firms. The idea being that someone would be doing marketing 52 weeks a year, coming in once a month or once a week rather, and just helping, being that go-between. And especially in a small firm, as many people know, there's a partner in leadership, and then there's sort of someone who's the marketing assistant or the marketing administrator, and nothing in between. So that person who's the marketing assistant may also be the receptionist or the HR director or the purchasing manager. That person in a small firm tends to do a lot. And so if marketing doesn't, get discussed every week, or it falls to the back because there are other priorities, marketing just doesn't happen. And also I should define that by marketing, I use that word to define kind of very broadly everything related to business development. We were talking about our mutual friend, Eben Falconer. Eben uses marketing as in a different way. And people have different understandings of what business development is, public relations, marketing. But I mean, like broadly, like the way the phone is answered, I think of as marketing, or, any of the more formal things that people do. So anyway, for me to come in and start working with firms in between the owner and the marketing assistant turned out to be very effective. And I was able to really, see change and success by by coming in and doing marketing every, 12 months a year, 52 weeks. And that's how I got started.
Amazing. So interesting. So I can hear myself.
Oh, no, I can't. No, I'm not getting an echo.
Okay. I hope it's gonna go away because
It's just
it's gone. Good. So yeah, it's really interesting. And you spoke a little bit about like the importance of sort of solving these problems for architects, which has to do with not really understanding how to market themselves and how to deal with actually positioning their mission or who they are in front of the right client. We are many years ahead now, and I still feel like architects behave a little bit like them children in a football field. So it seems like them old habits die hard. And even though we're very well advanced now with the digital transformation, so many tools available to us, there's still key issues, I guess, that a lot of architects are encountering with actually finding clients, positioning themselves, and communications. So what is the sort of top things that you find that architecture practices need when it comes to your expertise?
Okay, so this sounds like a really stupid and obvious thing to say. But one of the things I've found talking to small businesses, small practices especially, is that there's a shocking number of small practices that never write a business plan at the beginning of starting their business. It's very prevalent. And, people start their own practices because they often come from other larger firms. They think they can do it better. Architects think they will find, whatever small difference is in the way they want to practice than the way their large firm practiced. And that's sort of the driver often, but it's not actually, it's often doesn't allow them to think really broadly about a business plan and why they're really in business, what they really want to achieve. And one of the things that I talk about often when I talk about architecture is, thinking about why anyone practices architecture, or why anyone, feels passionately about what they do. And of course, those things are not unrelated. And in fact, I think they're super related, that when you're starting a business plan and you think about, your short and medium and long-term goals, what you want to do this year and in 5 years and in the end of your career and what you want to have done. Why do you want to have those goals, and what do they represent and what do they mean, and what's important to you? I mean, that's sort of the most bottom line question that I ask people at the beginning of talking. What's important to you? What are your values? And I think that if people understand their own values and articulate them, and are able to say, I value, whatever, sustainability, I value trying to solve climate change, like that's a super easy and obvious one. And if that is something that's really important to architects at the beginning of, as they're setting up a practice, that will drive a business plan, it will drive decision making, it will drive identity and branding, it will drive the way design is done, it will drive who you hire. So this core issue, this question that maybe sounds irrelevant at the beginning of what are your values, in fact, underlie everything you do as a practice, as a business owner, as an architect, whether, even if you don't own your own business, if you're an employee and you're making decisions and you want to figure out who to work for, what are your values? What do you think is important? If you know what that is, if you spend some time, a little bit of introspection, which is really hard. I mean, people may have this answer. They may have spent a lot of time. And actually, Sarah, I think that to their credit, the generation that's coming up and the generation that is, we can say millennials or younger, to their credit, have spent time thinking about what their values are. But if you spend time and you can if you really understand what's important to you, it ultimately will clarify everything that ultimately spins out around how you run your business, what your business is, what you want to do, what you want to say. And I think that this is a core idea. If I said one thing to people thinking about starting a business or starting a career or in the middle of their career, try to be clear about what you think is important, what your goals are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely understand from many perspectives that point, because working with clients, I find that it's one of the first things that we need to focus on is to define the why. And really, this is like a core or a foundation that we ourselves can come back to understand why we're pushing or wanting to grow the business or caring for customers and what sort of customers we want to attract as well. All of this is coming back to that question of why I'm doing what I'm doing and what is the real reason I'm here. But I think that I still find it to be an abstract concept for many. So do you maybe have like a good client example where you worked with an architect who managed to answer their why clearly, and somehow something happened in their communications where things just went different for that business?
I'm going to use there are a couple of examples I could use. I think it's easier if I talk about somebody who's not a current client. And I'm going to talk about an architect named Robin Gunther, who's currently at Perkins and Will, but owned her own company, her own firm who I started working with in about 2002 or 3. And when I first met Robin, she had a partner, and the partner had passed away. And when I asked what her kind of goal was in her practice, and at that time it was maybe 18 people, it was varied 18 to 20 people. Her goal, she said, was to honor her late partner's legacy and to sort of continue what he did. That was a good goal, but it turned out to be an incorrect answer. And the fact is, Robin was super interested in sustainable healthcare design, and she did a building at a place outside of New York City called the Center for Discovery. And this building that she designed with the staff, the firm designed, broke all kinds of barriers around sensitive and appropriate design for this school. The Center for Discovery served multiply severely disabled kids and adults. So the residents of the school and residents were, most of them nonverbal, most couldn't walk, almost everyone wheelchair bound, neurological, medically fragile. And Robin designed, the firm designed a beautiful, beautiful welcome building orientation center that was brilliant in the way the spaces were organized. It was a clinic, it was a recreation center, there was a climbing wall, there were offices, there was admin area, and everything, the circulation paths were all very separate. And understanding who the population was, the floors were radiant floors because a lot of the kids were on the floor all the time. The walls were sisal, which allowed the wheelchairs to come and not dent the walls or make, paint scratches. There were ramps all over the areas where the kids were. The HVAC systems were super unusual for that part of the world. It was a geothermal heating system. Air was controlled by brise soleil and sunlight was controlled by brise soleil and by shades. So there was solar shading. It was a super efficient building. It was published widely. It was on the cover of several magazines. But more to the point, this school, which had used traditional architecture and design, this school understood how important that building was. And the school changed its entire approach to building and to the way its physical plant worked based on that building. And at the time, Robin and the firm were, this is very front end. This is 2003, October 2003. So it was the fourth LEED certified building, I think, in the state of New York, and the second LEED certified building, healthcare building in the United States at that time. And watching the way the building changed the culture of the school and watching the way it served the people for whom it was intended so beautifully and so perfectly, and watching the amount of attention that it got from other people and how much interest there was in it, put Robin and her firm on a totally different course. And Robin, who is a brilliant woman and was always interested in a much greater story than, designing a pretty building, was reinforced in her advocacy work, and she became extremely involved. And she was involved already at the beginning of the USGBC, but she became, she got involved on the board of Healthy Building Network and Healthcare Without Harm, which is, I don't know if people know this, this is the group that originally took mercury out of thermometers. I don't know if anyone even remembers that there used to be something very toxic in thermometers.
Yeah, it would look like a ball, right?
Yeah. It's unbelievably toxic. And when the thermometer broke and the mercury fell, I remember as a kid,
yeah, you wanted to play with it.
Yeah. It was super toxic, right? So the point is that Robin became a national advocate around and ultimately the co-author of the textbook on sustainable healthcare design. The office, I'm not going to use the word pivoted, but really dug into healthy materials, healthier cleaning protocols, because these things reverberate, right? And working with hospitals and healthcare institutions to design fundamentally healthier environments that were less toxic to the nurses, that were less toxic to the patients, that were healthier to, everyone in healthcare. And this is 2003, it was exciting and meaningful and important work. And, I wasn't full-time staff. I was, again, I was coming in twice a week, but it became really obvious that this work was work I wanted to promote. Not just, was it important to everyone in the studio, but for me, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to help this firm. I want to help these people do what they're doing. I want to help them make it public. I want to help people understand why this is so important. and how it does reverberate through a system. So anyway, yeah, that was a really amazing opportunity, an
I
amazing
mean,
project.
yeah, what I love about it is how in depth you went to describe basically the design, how it was affected by finding that core belief. It's really changing the belief that drives us as a designer, and how much positive output that can have onto the material world, like the piece of design we create, but also on the people and teams involved. And it's really fascinating, and I really believe in that principle too. But I think that a lot of times it's really hard to understand how changing your belief or a core belief around why you're doing what you're doing can actually result in more joy and more love in what you do. So how would you say people can get there? What is the process of getting there for people? Is it a series of workshops? Is this asking just a question, why am I doing what I'm doing? Or is it something more to it?
Uh, that's a super core question. It's a kind of universal question. So let me think. I have a friend from whom I have learned a lot. Her name is Mary Vanderwaal. She actually lives in San Miguel de Allende now. She used to live in
Oh my God,
Brooklyn.
one of my favorite places in Mexico.
Of
Love
course,
it.
of course.
Love
Um,
it.
yeah, Mary is originally she's a Venezuelan Australian, and she came through Brooklyn. She's now in Mexico, and she's really smart. And Mary ran something for a while called the New York Brand Lab, and and she's still doing branding, although she's also doing some other stuff in San Miguel. Anyway, uh, several years ago, maybe 2012, she invited me into one of her branding workshops, and I attended, which was really important and wonderful. But to go back to your question, in preparation for the branding workshop, Mary sent all the participants a really long questionnaire. It was, I don't know, like 15 pages long, maybe. And she asked skazillion questions that seemed very, very personal and very personal. I'm not going to say invasive, because they ended up being relevant to the work, to the branding work that we did that day. And they were questions like, what did you want to be when you were a child? What did you think was important when you were a kid? What does no one know about you? What would I be surprised to know about you if I were your friend but didn't know? What were some of the other questions? What do you secretly wish you were better at? I mean, like, really personal questions, but they informed the work we did that day. And I ended up with a group of, that day it happened to be only women. I think there were 6 or 8 of us, and fascinating, amazing women. But talking about our innermost desires, our wishes, our deepest wishes, our oldest wishes, things that prevented us from getting to where we wanted to be, perhaps, or things that encouraged us to make strides professionally, ended up becoming clarification. And to my earlier comment, to some extent, values clarification around what each of us thought was important, what each of us wanted to do. One of the women became a very dear friend, my friend Carolina Fernandez. She was hysterically interesting. She Carolina was an investment advisor to mostly artists. And she had worked at like Merrill Lynch. And, she wanted to go out on her own and work with artists because what was the phrase she used? She wanted creative autonomy, like she wanted to do what she was good at, which was investment advising, but she wanted to do it for the people that she thought were interesting and who needed her service. And she became a very dear friend. So, it's an introspective process. Those answers come from thinking broadly and deeply about your life and what's mattered to you over the years. And if you think about those kinds of questions, you come to the answer of what you think is important. I mean, look, there are many people who think money is important, that money is a final goal of, and that, who has the most money at the end wins. It tends not to be architects, but, and could be money, could be saving the world, could be, creating beauty. It could be a few things, but, really being able to plant your flag in the sand, as I sometimes say, and state that and understand why you're driven to do whatever it is, why you're passionate about what you're doing, and hopefully you are passionate about what you're doing, absolutely will make decisions along the way clearer. And
Yeah.
I just want to make a point B of this answer, Sarah, which is that I have another brilliant friend. I know it sounds like I have only brilliant friends. My my dad's friend Barney used to say, if you hang out with people smarter than you, it proves you're smarter than them. I have another brilliant friend named Odine Bonthron, who is a branding consultant. And I know that the core of her branding work is also, to be values-based and to be deeply introspective in the way, she approaches her clients, so that they really do understand their why before they understand how and what. And one of the things Odine once told me is that when she works with small architecture firms or small creative professional services firms, once they've gone through the branding process and that gnarly, introspective, values defining process, not only will they be clear about their brand, and once the brand comes, everything's easier. What photos you show, what narrative you say, what ideas underscore your designs and your work. But she said, once we go through that process, the succession plan is done. Because what's important will drive who ends up taking over the firm. It's a fantastically intelligent approach.
Yeah, that's amazing. I never thought about this, but it's true. And I think that what's really powerful is when you spoke about answering all these personal questions. And in a way, they seem personal, but then again, we ourselves disconnect from them, because when whoever wakes up in the morning and thinks, oh, what was my dream when I was 5? But those kind of things can really show a trend of what mattered from the very beginning. And I find that money is very rarely the end goal. When you start asking and digging in, it will be something like more like parental approval, or being free, or having the ability to, do what I want, not be dependent on the system, or, this sort of stuff, or making my dreams come true. And so it's interesting, because I think that it evokes for us to know ourselves better. And when we do, that why shines through. And yes, it does through your brand, or through the way that we serve our customers, but it can be very transformative. And I certainly have experienced that for myself. As I also moved from one business to another, and the storytelling ability changed the more I educated myself around marketing and business, and discovered the power of actually owning your story and being able to share it, even if parts of it are uncomfortable sometimes, because there's failure, or what we judge as failure. But it's proven to be a very powerful way for me to own that story in my business too. So I think that the why is a very important aspect. And I spoke about this a little bit on my Profitable Architects online podcast as well. Went into detail about storytelling and how it's important to own your why. But I love the examples you've given today, and how profound they changed not just the experience of the business owner, but also the outcomes of the design and the team and other people involved. So it's very interesting. And, if people are interested to do this kind of workshop or go into depth of kind of looking into the foundations of their brand and answering some of these profound questions about why I'm here, what I'm doing, re-looking for your purpose. I believe that you're available for consultations, right?
I am. Yes, I am. Sarah, can I say one more thing that goes
Go
back to
on.
exactly what you just said? It's actually an insight that I had recently, which is interesting because, I'm doing what I'm doing a long time, but it's about process and how you were talking about, thinking again about process and how you had learned more, about marketing as you had gotten into it. So one of the things I do want to make a note for, any architect or, any architect who's working with a consultant is that I was talking earlier this season with a newish client that's a landscape architecture office. And it's a super, super talented office who I'm really, really excited to be working with. And I know that they have a lot of really ambitious goals around becoming better known. This is why they hired us. And I believe that I will help them become better known and that my team and I will do that. But walking in the door when I first start talking to them, or even 6 months into it, I don't know exactly what the steps are, or what the exact plan is, or what the, secret recipe is for doing that. And at about 6 months into our working together, I went to visit them in San Francisco, and I was talking to one of the partners, and he sort of said, I feel like we're making progress. And I said, I do too, which is true. But I said to him, this is a process where you have to go, until you go through it, until you're working with a in my case, a communications or marketing or PR company, and they get to know you and you get to know them. And I start on my side to understand more of their talent and their range and how they do things. And I need to understand and just learn more deeply about them, so I can make better, whatever decisions I make about what to do and how to get to their goal and how to get there. And I said to him, you know what, Jeff, it's sort of like design. You can't start here and end up there without going through that process. And I had never really thought that what I do had any, process relationship to what design is. I'd never really thought that I thought what I do is super different than what designers do.
Mm-hmm.
But when I said that, it was like this light bulb went off in my head, and I was able to, and I said, Jeff, you don't know at the beginning how you're going to get to the end, and you're not entirely sure, what the kind of goal is, but really, really 100% know what it's going to look like. And that is true too for someone like me who helps. I'm going to help this firm and this group become better known and become more visible to the people that matter to them, not to the whole world, but to the people that matter to them. That I can do by developing a strategy for them. But in terms of process, it's a very similar idea that there's a give, take, learn, understand, dialogue, back, forth, set this goal, go in this direction. It's not right, correct it, do another. So for anyone who, hears this and is thinking about, as an architect, thinking about working with a consultant, understand it's a process. It takes time. It's not like, cause, effect, A, B. It's not a button you push. It's about a really deeply understood and considered strategy and a series of actions to get to that place. It's kind of like design.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah.
And also, there is certainly that experimentation phase too. Sometimes people think that a consultant comes in and gives you ready-made steps, and every single time you just tick a box and keep moving. But sometimes you have to try things out. Will this communication work for the audience? What is going to be the response? Is it a worthwhile investment into, let's just say, from marketing perspective? To do this approach over another. And so for each business, I think it's there is a lot of that experimentation before you find the perfect recipe for what works for that particular business. But having said that, and I think it's also something that we touched on in this conversation, is that sort of personal acknowledgement that comes from doing that work with the consultant like you, for the business owner to connect a little bit better with the reason why, and also understanding what quality clients we want to work with, what sort of projects we prefer to work on. There's a lot of different things we didn't yet touch on, and I know that they're also close to your heart, that kind of derive from that core why. Because if you find your why and you connect to your passion, but then you attract a lot of people that don't appreciate it, that's not really the ideal case scenario. So we then go back to the drawing board and say, okay, who would be the perfect customer here? The perfect person to work with that really would appreciate my mission, but also financially would be a good projection or growth strategy for my business. And so all those things really, really connect. And something that I personally have been saying for a long time, that for me, doing business, being in business is really like the ultimate spiritual growth, because sometimes you explore things that are a little bit uncomfortable. Sometimes you have to go more in. Sometimes you have to get out of yourself to do something. So it's always, exploring the unknown, having to grow out of comfort zones, learn new things, ask the right questions. And so this sort of mentality, I think, is something that I try to encourage through this podcast, but also share with the audience, because there is no one definite way to do things, but we need to find the right way for ourselves to do things that works for us and our business, basically.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's been a really inspirational talk. I loved the examples you've given. And let's talk a little bit about your practice, your consultancy, and the services that people can obtain, and how would people find you online?
Okay. I'm a ridiculous business. I'm a very small business. I have a pretty limited capacity, but that is because I'm personally involved in everything we do. For large architectural offices or larger firms, we act as a PR. Those firms tend to have internal marketing departments and marketing staff. And for those firms, we tend to act as a PR agency, where we really just deal with getting published, speaking opportunities, sort of a traditional public relations role. And I do that for a couple of larger firms. And then for smaller offices, because I have been a marketing director, because I'm thinking, strategically about marketing, I'm also about PR. I mean, honestly, like I said, when we do PR, I think one of the things that separates us as public relations professionals is that, again, we're very analytical. We really don't want to just go out and, be out in the world for no reason. We want to understand the message, the audience, why it's appropriate. I sometimes say a business plan's here, a marketing plan supports the business plan, public relations supports marketing, right? They all have to be in line with each other, and they all have to be moving in the same direction with the same goal. That's how we do PR. For smaller firms, I have been, and I am currently, both doing PR and also almost like a freelance marketing director. And that's, it's time consuming, but it's also very rewarding because, again, an unbelievably large number of firms are successful sort of in spite of themselves or successful for other reasons besides the fact that they've been thinking about marketing. I have another client at the moment. They're also landscape architects, actually, who are in a city that has exploded in the last 30 years. The city's, it's like Austin, Nashville, Raleigh, Durham, a couple of other cities in the United States are really growing fast. A lot of businesses coming, a lot of development, a lot of real estate. This firm was in the right place at the right time, and they did the right things, not because they were thinking about marketing, but because they knew it was important to be on the, the art commission or the zoning commission, or to be active in protecting, trees in the city. Anyway, the point is they're very, very important in the city, but they never thought about marketing. They've never thought about how to talk about their own work. They've never thought about their own narrative or about what they're presenting or about the quality of their photography. They've been lucky because the phone has been ringing all along, because they've been so smart about the way they position themselves in the city and with the city government and with the real estate community. But in fact, now that they're in one of these cities that's gotten a lot of attention and is very high growth, landscape architects from New York and Los Angeles and Seattle and from all over the country are now starting to work in that city. And they have to maybe not directly compete with, world-class architects, but they certainly have to be able to have a, good online presence. They have to, sometimes I say to people, and I've said this to them, you can't just think about your website as something that's like sitting out there that has a few photos and that, if someone looks at it and says, okay, this is really a firm. I mean, you have to think about some mid-level real estate manager who wants to hire you and wants to take you to their CEO, and say, okay, here, how would the CEO know about you? Here's a link, open this website. The CEO of a real estate development firm from another place entirely doesn't know you from your town. They're going to look at your website, So anyway, it's part of, how did I get down there? Oh, because I was talking about being, serving as a marketing director for these people. I'm sort of part-time and remote, but again, it's bringing back a focus. I'm trying to get them to focus on, best practices, again, even the most basic best practices in marketing. So depending on meeting people where they are, understanding what their needs are, obviously, as you can hear, I'm sort of a very, very custom solution. I'm not at all taking, a prepackaged solution. Everything I do depends on, the people, the situation, what they're doing. So yeah, I've kind of marketing consulting and public relations. Those are the two things I do. My site is theivaAgency.com. Sarah, there you are. Okay, I lost you for a second. TheivaAgency.com, and that's who we are.
Amazing. I will put the links in the also in the description, so people can find the agency and contact you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iva, for this conversation. It was super inspiring. It inspired me, and I hope the audience as well. It was lovely to host you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks a lot, and I hope that there'll be more coming in the future, and we'll stay connected.
I hope we stay connected too. I know you're doing some really cool stuff. Thank you.
And we seem to have a lot of friends in common as well.
We do.
But for now, Happy New Year and all the best in 2022. And to you listeners as well. It's great to be back with podcasts. I have more of them coming up this year. And we also will be updating the Apple Podcast presence. So keep your eyes peeled on anything that is happening online from me soon. There's great announcements coming in as well, more value, more education about business, bringing in more experts and possibility for everyone to develop further. So thank you so much. much. I'm not going to say too much, so I'm going before I speak too much about it. But yes, we soon have a great announcement for all of you. So yeah, speak to you soon. See you all soon, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Everyone.